Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I'm host Matt Gardner. Welcoming back good friend, fellow coach, COLLIN MEEVES. COLLIN, how are you today?
Oh, Matt, I'm doing fantastic, man. Anytime I can hop on and have a conversation with you, I'm in a good place here.
Hell yeah. Reciprocate that right back to you. Thanks for the kind words. We've had a really cool podcast collaboration, beyond our strong coach relationship that we'd had. So yeah, dude, for sure. Happy to have you back on. And, we basically hopped right into it, which is what I was excited to do. I think the only thing that I gave you was like the precursors, like, a lot of the stuff that we talk about after we've hit stop on the recording is like gold, in my opinion. So it's like, I wanted to just hop right into it and just have a just natural conversation and just kind of, do it. So I'd love to check in with you, man. How are things going on Collin's side of the world?
Things are going great, man. I was reflecting right before hopping on. I was doing a bit of journaling, just getting some thoughts out and creating space for this here. And I was thinking about when we recorded back in November, and then we recorded for your podcast initially, and then in December for mine. And it's so amazing how much can transpire and how much can evolve during such a short span of time, 2, 3 months. And what we talked about off air after we finished recording for my podcast was the different types of coaching that we went on to receive after the strong coach. And I just finished up my Sell with Soul program with Jesse Elder, and I was in Austin last week for a couple days with him, and it was an experience where I'm on the other side of it now, still absorbing it and realizing what I have been hiding from everybody in terms of social media and people that are connecting with me, even yourself in the strong coach. I had this, let's just dive right into it. I had this aversion to like fitness and health coaching because I came from that CrossFit space for such a period of time and found myself so burnt out with that in-person group style of coaching where it's like I needed that break. And what I'm realizing now is like that resistance to wanting to share that part of me, which is such a foundational pillar of my life, my health, it is the anchor for everything that I do. So what's changed, what's new is that I'm sitting here realizing how much opportunity to connect with other people and influence their life and the way that health has influenced my life, that I've been hiding it. And I feel bad. Like, I feel like, what the heck am I doing? So bad's not the right word, but I imagine as a fellow coach, you know what I mean? When you're like, you have this epiphany of like, oh my gosh, I could be helping so many people with this.
Right. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I love that. A great starting point, First off, yeah, Jesse Elder. Anybody that's unfamiliar with Jesse Elder's work, go check it out. So he's Time Piercer, is that right? His handle on Instagram? Is that
On Instagram is Time Piercer, and what I've learned is that he's actually a lot more active on Facebook. If you
Facebook? Interesting.
Yeah.
Ooh, I gotta check this out then.
Yeah, Facebook, from what I gather, is his main platform.
Really?
So if you would like to connect with Jesse, I would suggest going to Facebook.
Excellent. That's a good tip. So Jesse is, I was tempted. I watched the On Strong Coach. They had the 2-hour presentation a few weeks back, and basically at the end he had the the ability to sign up for the program. I imagine it's the same one you're talking about, Sell with Soul. Yeah. And holy crap, anytime he speaks, I'm just like riveted, and it makes so much sense, and it really hits me in the feels and gets me super motivated. So I'd love to hear more about what some of the other takeaways, but let's get back to the first one that you mentioned. And yeah, I can relate to that. It's like I imagine it's sort of like parent guilt. It's like coach guilt. It's like, oh man, I was missing the mark for these last 6-8 months, you know what I mean? So I totally get that. Yeah, interesting though, right? It's like, so I really want to hear more about this. Like, you had this aversion to it. I'm getting that too, man. I'm at the stage where I feel like I'm really, take out the feel like I'm ready to level up. And there is this something in me. There's like this little perceived block of me, especially on the social media part. And yeah, and again, I want to get into that with you because you're just killing it right now, in my opinion. where yeah, there is, and I like what you're saying is hiding. I haven't viewed it as that in myself, but now that you're saying it, I'm like, ooh, that's like that does strike a bit of a nerve with me. So yeah, let's get into that. So I'd like to unpack that whole topic of what made you choose the word hiding specifically. Like, what were you hiding, and like, how did you come to that realization? What exactly brought that out of you?
Many things did along the way. Like it wanted to like poke its head through and to give some background to that that would help the listeners understand this is that you and I went through Strong Coach, the Freedom Program. Excuse me. So you had this formula, this framework to create a program as an online coach or even in person that you could sell. And basically meshing together, when you look back at your hero's journey, for those that are not familiar with the hero's journey, it's very apparent. I know many people are familiar with Star Wars. It's like you have this call to adventure, this call to action, and then you go through this cyclical process where you have this death and rebirth and this resurrection, and you cross this threshold on either side of going into the journey and then the exiting of the journey where you're experiencing life in this new way. And I created this program that I really felt encapsulated what benefited me along the way. And this journey of transition, as I transitioned into fatherhood, as I transitioned from working for someone to creating and starting my own coaching business. And as I exited that space of working for someone, I was working at a CrossFit gym, and I still to this day think CrossFit is one of the uh, best methodologies in terms of health and fitness when applied appropriately. The caveat there is it's not always applied appropriately, and I share that because as I was exiting that space, is that I was so burnt out because I didn't appropriately apply CrossFit in the way that it was supposed to be applied. And what I recognize is I was very unfulfilled in my coaching at that point. And I wanted to reach people beyond this 60-minute class with, 10 to 12 people where you have maybe a handful of minutes with each, where I wanted something more intimate. And in that process, when I was making that transition, I'm like, I need to do something completely different than health and fitness. And I was trying to create this more like I don't even know what to call it at this point, but it's like, hey, just you need to reinvent yourself. And I really created a program that worked with things that worked for me. But in that process, I was hiding this really integral part of myself where when I've been doing some reflecting recently, is that when I think of my top three values in life, health is 100% in those top three.
Mm.
And in my program that I created and coaching with people, I was like so averse to using any, like it was part of it, but it's like I was so focused on the goals and vision and the story work, and it's all valuable, but really, like I've created this system of habits that make a kick-ass lifestyle where you feel great and you're super productive and energized based on the health habits. And that's what's really guided me is what I've been reflecting on recently is how I quote unquote work out less in the last 2 years. And that's because I've wiped that word out of my vocabulary to some degree. And I just focus on moving my body.
Mm.
And it's like these principles that, people are like, oh, I need to work out. I need to work out. And there's this part of me that like, oh, nobody's going to want that. Nobody's going to think that's valuable because they're not working out, where working out is just a piece of the pie. It's not the whole thing, where it's like you have sunlight, you have how you breathe, you have how you eat, hydration, your sleep, like all that stuff is all part of that health pie.
Mm.
And movement, working out is all part of it. But I had this aversion to sharing that because it's like I like was so averse to it in my own life. Even it's like I wasn't doing the quote unquote things to be as healthy as I could be, although I maintained like well above average health.
Mm.
In terms of body composition, I never measured it, but my body fat percentage probably never got above 12%. And it's just like I became a father. I was navigating, creating and starting my own coaching business, like all these things, and my health never took a back seat.
Mm,
And as of late, like in Jesse's program, I had so many roadblocks where I was like, dude, I know I can, like you said, level up. I know I can level up, but like the ideas were not coming to me within the perspective that I was looking at of like,
mm,
oh, I can help you increase your revenue and stuff like that. Like things that
right.
I really was not like that passionate about coaching, or I didn't really want to, where it's like I just didn't. I had this notion in my mind that health could not do that stuff. And I was just staying away from it, staying away from it. But it kept on coming back to me. And to wrap this up, per se, is like I went through 10 weeks of Sell with Soul with Jesse, went to Austin at this live event with just a very intimate environment of a few other people in his living room. And the very first thing that we did was connect with our purpose, and all of us shared our purpose. It was all around how we can serve other people, where it's like, no, it's your purpose. What are
Mm,
you here to do?
ooh,
Who are you here to be?
right.
And what I that was so powerful for me, because it's like the basis, the gist of it is like to be present and aware in my life experiences, to connect with myself at the deepest level, the levels that I've accessed and the ones that I haven't accessed yet. And that connection is not just this spiritual connection, it's this connection through movement and through taking care of my body as well, which is this amazing portal. And it's like to be present and aware of that is this avenue for me to learn what's worked for me and how to share it with these other people. And I realized recently when I came back, I haven't created or curated any quote unquote content. I've just gone live on Instagram.
Mm,
And I've just
mhm,
talked about what is coming to my mind. I've asked some people some questions. And what I notice is like when I talk about health stuff, hydration, nutrition, food, getting outside, moving your body, like I light up and I get so energized. So
mm,
it's a very deep answer there, a
mhm,
lot
mhm.
at one time. But like that was really the journey where I've been so averse to it. And it's like I'm not experiencing that leveling up because there's friction and resistance to what is really part of my purpose.
Right, right. Yeah, that's profound. And it does show in your, in your approach, your work, your presentation, and I just want to say anybody that's listening to this that hasn't given Colin a follow, what is your Instagram handle? And I would highly, highly recommend that they follow you.
It's at Collin, COLLIN underscore Meeves, MEEV as in Victor, ES.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm just loving the stuff that you're coming. You know what? So I truth be told, I went back on your journey. I scrolled back quite far, just to see, because I'm really proud of, how you're and I admire you now. Like I see, like, I don't know if you heard of like the Carl Jung, the whole idea of the golden shadow, right? Where
Mm.
you're like you can admire somebody because that's something that I see in myself, as far as like, oh, okay, and I don't mind saying that, it's like we came out of that same graduation program, and I actually saw your progression from, if I'd say like around July of last year, there started to be this like transition into this different Colin. And then just like recently, like I'd say like where you're talking about the November, December when we've been talking, it was always already very apparent that your progression, for listeners, is starting to do like the hockey stick thing. And just recently, like with the Instagram lives, your stories that are in like trilogies or 5 parts or whatever, even just like the beard, man, like everything about you now is just like this, yeah, you have this aura about you, aura of it's like confidence and yeah, I guess like that authenticity word, right? It's just like it is you. So I really believe, I love that you gave this in-depth explanation as to where you are now. I really truly believe that, that you have tapped into this side of you and you're showing it, on a daily basis and such. So really proud of you for that. And yeah, I love following your stuff, man. And to me, it's like, I don't mind saying it's not a jealousy thing. It's more the golden shadow where I'm just like, shit. Yeah. Like you're doing the thing. And for me, it's like kind of, in a way, it's a roadmap. It's like, okay, so if this is working for him, what can I do, or who do I need to become to be able to, uh, present myself in this way that's true to me. It's not like I'm going to be, necessarily copying anybody. So yeah, it's just inspiring, man. I've really enjoyed, following you and following your journey. And I highly recommend anybody that does. Now, having said that, you do have a specific audience. I'm sure that you're open to, helping whoever, but you do have a specific audience that you target, and you're known as the, father. I don't want to. What is your quote that you have? I'm gonna butcher it. I'll paraphrase it. Right. So
It's
what is your,
okay.
yeah.
It's always a work in progress. I did that back in November. I put up there the lifestyle and health coach for girl dads.
Yes, there it
Like
is.
it's
Yeah.
it was a bold statement,
Yeah.
but I it works for me. What I've
Yeah.
done works for me, and
Yeah.
I imagine it'll work for other fathers. And that's not a cocky statement. It's just like that. That's what I want to be. I want to
Right.
be the lifestyle and health coach for girl dads.
Yeah. I love it. That's so cool. How old are your girls now?
She just basically she's about like 2.5.
Two and a half.
Yeah, you just kind of round
Yeah.
up to the next half year in my mind. Or I should say I do at least.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Very cool, very cool. I'm curious. So I just go back. You said you have your three core values or principles, however you word. I think values. So health being one of them. I share that with you. Overall health. I know it's a broad term, but it's so important. Mental, physical health, spiritual health, balance, if you will. What are your other two? What would you say are your other two, core values or how you show up?
Yeah, this is a great question. I know two of them. I'm still like brainstorming on that third of like what really do I value? So it's health and loyalty. And
Mm.
that was like
Mhm.
one night I just had one of those moments where it clicked. And this was part of that process. Like what's important to me? And I realized along with the health piece that like words are very important to me. My love language, one of the top ones is words of affirmation. And I share that because like when I say that I do something, that I'm going to do something and I don't do it, it like eats at me, and I value myself on doing what I say I'm going to do. And in this process of self-discovery over the last couple months too, I realized that I shied away from doing things that I would say I would do, because I would either overcommit or I would be afraid of challenging myself. Like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to handle that? Like a fear of failure. So to answer that question, it's like I realized how much loyalty is and how much I was like pushing myself down by not being as loyal as I felt like I could be. And I'm still searching for, not searching, but like what that third one is. I want to land on it and round out that top three of health, loyalty, and then blank.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like you mentioned, with a lot of the work that we do, which is one of my favorite characteristics of coaching and working with people and helping them reinvent and find out who they are and so forth, is work in progress. You know what I mean? The lifelong
Mm-hmm.
learning thing. I find that my values have changed or modified, or I find a word that perhaps is a layer deeper or a layer above that one, and there can be the trickle down to the word. I'm like, oh, there's something actually above that that actually captures or encapsulates what I'm going for with that previous core value. So as that's I hear you on that. There's definitely some flexibility and fluidity with the core values thing, right? And sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
find I go through like seasons of values that really resonate with me, and then it's like a discovery process where I'm like, this word's actually, you know what I mean? Like you say, the power of words. This word's really resonating with me right now. And it still
Yeah.
very much is in the neighborhood of a previous one, right? So very
You know, it's
cool.
an interesting thing. I had an experience recently where actually, let me share this thought is that it's almost like I can, it's not almost like I can keep that third one open and have it be
Right.
like this, like rotating door of like, hey,
Yeah.
what's present for me right now? And in the process, I may find that third one that's
Hmm.
like, this is it.
Hmm.
And what this reminded me of, you bringing this up, well, while I was in Austin, I had this experience to be able to go to dinner with this marketing. And I don't know if you remember, this podcast was posted in the Freedom Group while we were
Hmm.
going through it.
Yeah.
It was, are you familiar with Christina Wise, the
Oh,
financial lady?
Not ringing a bell.
Okay.
I'm pretty bad remembering names though. So
No worries. I'll do my best
yeah.
to highlight who she is. It's the financial course that Mike Bledsoe had gone through,
Oh,
and
okay.
then a lot of people surrounding him had gone through that. She had a podcast episode where she had this. I'm not sure if he would technically be called a marketer, but Ron Lynch. And Ron Lynch is this guy, if I remember correctly, worked with Yeti, GoPro,
Mm,
and helped them really develop their marketing and get them to where they are.
yeah.
I had the opportunity to go to dinner with this guy, not just me and him, but with a group of people while I was in Austin. And he asked this question that was so fun to answer. And it highlights this idea of values where, and it's a fun way to go about it, is he asked us all at the table, who's one person that you really admire who walked the earth? Meaning not like a fictional character, but someone who was someone who actually lived and had some impact and that you admire. And we all went around and shared our one person. And he said, what are three character traits that you admire about them? Like
Mm.
that basically mean why you admire them. And for example, my person was Albert Einstein.
I,
And
yeah.
do you resonate
Dude,
with
yeah,
that one?
I was gonna ask you, and mine was Albert Einstein. So fun.
Really?
But yeah, I want to hear you. Yeah, yeah. By all means, I
It's
want to hear.
it's amazing because like I thought about it and I was like doubting myself once he started asking the character traits and I started thinking about him like I love this guy's curiosity.
Mm,
I
hmm.
love his I forget everything else that the two other things that I said about him, but loyalty came to mind as well to some degree with him. I mean,
Hmm.
he has his own story of mistresses and whatnot, so maybe not in that sense, but in
Yeah.
other ways to his values as a person and the work that he did up until the atomic bomb. I think was the first time that he really like stepped outside of those lines. Um, but you give those three character traits that you value about them and then he did it at just one because we had a few people at the table, but he shared, oh, this is a question that I ask in interviews. And I ask people for three people that they admire and three character traits for each person. And then you
Mm.
have these nine character traits that you really begin to understand what's important to that other person. You learn a lot about
Mm.
them. And he shared this as like an interview question that he asked people who are potentially going to work with him or that he's potentially going to associate with and work with to
Hmm.
get an idea where their values are. And I thought it was so fun and a genuine way to get an understanding of what's important to the other person. And I ended up reciprocating the question to him. And he shared his, I forget all three people, but one was Jesus, and not for the exact way that you would typically hear people say Jesus, but like some of the things that he rebelled in a way and that
Mm.
he went against the grain. It is super interesting to hear his answer and insightful for that matter, but I thought it to be such a cool way to get to know someone and potentially help a client of yours when they're looking for, hey, what are my values? It's a fun way to do it.
Yeah, definitely, man. I love that. And definitely it gets into the same territory as what we talked about before, the admiration piece of like the golden shadow. You admire somebody as you champion that in yourself or see that in yourself or whatnot. So the admiration side. I think mine would be just coming up with it on the fly. Bruce Lee
Mm,
and Einstein and then Wayne Dyer.
mm,
Came to mind right away just for his speaking ability and his way to say a certain thing a certain way and just have it like really get the point across. And, again, the power of words, one sentence, the way that he says it is just like, oh, okay, I understand that now. Yeah. I love that. That's really cool, man. Yeah, and I want to get into, I'm just thinking this on the fly here. I'd love to do like we'll break this into to two parts and I'll give you the reason why, because I really want to get into your choice of alcohol-free living. So I
hmm
do the two podcasts. So what I'm going to do is just have a break point and we'll get into that. So that way I can do one part for my the coaching centric and then one for the actual recovery or in this case choice conscious choice not to drink alcohol. So I'd love to do that. And then that way we can I can engineer the episodes so when I have it on the recovery episode, we can start with the part two, if you will, invert them. So I really
Yeah,
want to do that. Are you down to are you up to do that, I should say?
absolutely. That's an
Awesome, bud.
interesting. I say that. Are you down a lot? And then
Yeah.
the
I'm
way you
like, wait,
corrected that, it's like,
yeah,
why? Why do we
yeah.
want to be down?
Yeah, that's right. I was like, yeah, that's what I used to. Yeah, that was a big one for me. I'm finding that I can correct myself uh, very easily and nimbly on text message and an email, just the visual. I correct
Hmm.
my verbiage as we talk about like an enlifted and even strong coach, like negations and things of that nature. Finding it a lot more challenging to do on my actual speaking.
Hmm.
And I imagine that it was, yeah, it's an old speech pattern of mine that I um, take a second to kind of get my thoughts going. And oftentimes there'll be landing words or soft talk or something that comes out. And that's just me kind of like, you know what I mean? Kind of getting
Yeah.
things going, right? And like I can hear myself after it. I don't quite have the brain to tongue coordination to correct myself on the you know what I mean? On in real time. I imagine part of that is the breathing aspect is getting really like you're very calm. I'm loving your body language. You got your arms all there. I still yeah, like when I'm hosting podcasts and on calls with folks, I am generally still have this pattern of like holding my breath and using more words than are needed to get my point across a lot of times. So
Hmm.
working on that, work in progress, as one of the themes that we're talking about today.
You and me both, man.
Right?
You
Yeah.
know, and I want to give a shout out to Matt Gallo. He's the one that encouraged me to sit like this on calls.
Yeah.
I was on a call with him one time, and
Yeah.
he is like, "Where are you sitting?" And I'm like, "I'm sitting on a stability ball." And he's like, "Well, you go sit somewhere where you can relax." And I'm like, "That's a
Yeah.
great idea." And so that was 2, 3 weeks ago, and here I
Yeah.
am. It's amazing what this natural like posture and
Yes.
how much your posture can influence you.
Big time. Big time. That's a big like Tony Robbins thing. Where it's just like what that's because that's one of the things you're in control of, right? If you change your body language, if you change the way you're sitting, yeah, instantly. And dude, Matt's one of my favorite all-time guests. I love Matt, such a thoughtful guy. And I
Hmm.
would love to have that demeanor, right? He takes his time, he's very deliberate with what he says. Just a thoughtful guy. Awesome name, Matt G as well. We call each other
Hmm.
the other Matt G. So yeah, he's a great guy. So yeah, Colin, just anything else you want to bounce on? Like I imagine the other podcast is talking about the lifestyle change, the conscious choice to remove alcohol. That'll come up. Yeah, anything else we want to riff on here? Like I'm just thinking, anything else that came out of your time in Austin? It's sounding big. Anything as far as how your podcast is going? I'd love to just give you the open floor if there's anything that's on your mind or coming up for you right now.
Yeah, the podcast, a simple one, is like it's like this on again, off again relationship with myself, and because in this process, I just realized that like it was fun, but I was getting so stressed out with it again, and
Interesting. Yeah.
lining it up. But what it comes back to is this whole idea of overcommitting. It's like
Okay.
and it ties into so many things. Is that yeah, I needed to like take a step. I didn't need to. I wanted to take a step back and reevaluate that relationship because I really wanted to be fun. And it wasn't like when I recorded with other people, it was fun. But then I'm like, oh, putting the episode out. And it's just like, instead of overcommitment, that was the non committal part of it. So,
Ah,
yeah, my relationship with my podcast is a work in progress, as any relationship is. And I know I have plenty of great episodes recorded with yourself, with Matt Gallo, and other coaches. It's like they will come out, and they will be put out there. Where I'm in this position where I'm sitting here, and it's like I want everything to be perfect when I put it out, and then there's this idea of just putting it out, and I'm like floating in the middle of it, non-committing to, or what would
yeah.
be the right word? Yeah,
Yeah.
non-committal,
Right.
where
Right.
it's like I need to step back, see it for what it is, and I don't have to put it out right now. I would
Hmm.
love to. Um, but at the same time, it's going to have the same value that it would have if it came out 2 months ago or if it comes out a month. Like it's the same
Mm,
conversation.
right. Yeah.
So yeah, the podcast. I say it's interesting. I find it interesting where it's like I love podcasts so much. Yeah, I think making a decision now. It's just time to put them out there
Right.
and not have it be this big old production thing. Like it's fun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of threads that we could pull on there, I imagine. But yeah, does anything pop up to you from that one?
Well, definitely. So the first thing, just so folks can find it, the aligned lifestyle, correct?
Yeah, the Align Lifestyle Podcast.
Very
If you
cool.
just Google that, it'll come up on either Apple, Anchor, or Spotify.
Beautiful. Yeah, one thing that comes up, and like I totally get this, and I imagine it's going to be, you know, it'll resonate with people that are listening too, is like these projects of I have the exact same thing happen too, right? With the podcast. I love it when I'm on like a conversation, like I knew this conversation was going to be great. And, I have this amazing time meeting new people and networking and such. I definitely have a degree of that. I don't know what the word is without being too dramatic. There's like a subtle dread. Dread is dramatic, but that's why I say subtle.
Right.
I'm tempering it, whatever the word would be for that. In between, right? It's just like the yeah, and it's more so like the lead up to like the energy, like the knowing that it's okay, it's coming. And what I usually do is I record on Monday. I'll do like 3 or 4 podcasts, and then that way that's like my month's worth of recording, so I can stay ahead. And it's yeah, for whatever reason, there, like, I know what you mean. It fluctuates between like when I'm in the moment, when I'm recording, it's fun. It's always worthwhile. It's like going to the gym. It's like, there's a bit degree of like, hesitancy beforehand. And then when I go, I'm like, oh, that was awesome. Like, why was I concerned? Yet there is something that shows up inside of me, in my body, as far as like, yeah, I don't really know how to describe it other than it's like a degree of hesitancy, uncertainty, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a little bit unresolved. So it fluctuates between this feeling that I imagine you're the same way, where you haven't quite identified why it's there or what it necessarily is. That's why I'm having a hard time putting words to it. And then fluctuating into it is fun. So it's in this
Yeah.
flux state. So I totally get that. And I imagine there's a lot of people that have hobbies, people that do creative things on the side, music, playing an instrument, learning an instrument. I imagine that shows up, right? It's like you really have this like desire and you envision yourself doing it. And there can be this fluctuation between, setting the time aside, prioritizing it. And in
Mm-hmm.
that like gap between perhaps a feeling of obligation or a past story and actual fun, yeah, it can feel a little bit uncomfortable, I would say. Does that kind of touch on what you were talking about?
Yeah, and what highlights to me is this. It's not systematized yet, and
Sure, sure.
and a couple different layers deep to that is it's also not safe in your nervous system yet.
Right, right.
And I share that, and that some people might be like, "Oh my gosh, you took it deep," but it
Yeah.
is like even what you're talking about is like fear. What is
Mm,
fear other
hmm.
than sensations that you're experiencing in your body,
Hmm.
and then thoughts that you're attaching to those sensations?
Right.
And what we're both speaking of is what's holding us back. Maybe it's not exactly fear of something in particular, but it's this sensation of like, this is not normal. This is unnatural. It's uncomfortable.
Right.
And it's not normalized in your nervous system yet. And as we were talking about this, like what has stood in my way, excuse me, from my podcast becoming a thing? Because I love having conversations. Like right now, I'm not worried about anything else. I'm here and I love this. Why don't I do it? And what it comes down to, and I shared a post on this recently where like um, the word that comes to mind is an overdoser, but that can, trigger some
Ah,
people in that way. But I'm a
sure.
maximum effective doser, and so is
Yeah.
most of Western society. How
Mm,
much could I possibly do? And I'm going to do that until I burn out. And they don't think
mm,
that, but they just do it. Where
right.
this mindset that I've really learned to adopt is this minimum effective dose mindset, and
Mm,
similar to this whole concept around microdosing things, right?
sure,
It's
sure.
really what it is like you're just getting enough dosage for you to get enough of it, and then it has the effect on it. With that being said, is that where I go, I'm not going to say go wrong with the podcast, but what I do is I'm like, okay, I'm going to record every week, this, and it's like,
Yeah.
then I've overcommitted, and
Mm-hmm.
then I burn out and I crash
Right.
and burn, and it's like then I need a break, and that's where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm.
Where if I were to create a system for it, pulling from even our last conversation on your podcast from Atomic Habits, like
Mm.
the first law is to make it, maybe it's not the first law, but one of the two, it's like make it easy.
You're right.
And we have this aversion to making things easy, at least in the United States, and I imagine Western culture in general is like it's about how much you can work. The more work you do, the more money you make, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
Mm-hmm.
this conditioning of if I do it, I need to. And you hear this from people often. Well, I don't do anything unless I'm fully committed to it.
Sure.
And what that is just your perfectionism keeping you comfortable. And that's
Mm.
what I've learned about myself is
Mm-hmm.
I've stayed comfortable for far too long because I'm a perfectionist.
Mm.
Well, that shit don't fucking exist. If you're
Mm.
perfect, what are you doing with life? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like you can
Mm-hmm.
be content, yes, but more times than not, you're not going to stay content forever because
Mm-hmm.
that means you're done expanding, you're done growing, and you just stay in your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the comfortable thing for me is to do as much as I can for as long as I can do it, burn out, and that's not comfortable, but it's comfortable enough that I continue to repeat this process. So coming
Mm.
back to this whole idea of it not being safe in your nervous system, if it were safe, then it would be normalized. And if it's
Right.
normalized, then you're doing it enough that it stays consistent.
Yeah, right on. No, I love all of that. And, you know, even as you were speaking, I was reflecting on, okay, well, what is my pattern? Because you're mentioning this burnout pattern, totally relate to that. You know, I still have a pattern that I carried from my previous career, you know, into this new coaching journey. It's like I just came past my 1 year being full time as a coach a couple days ago.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. You know, so and it's served me well. You know, it's definitely an achiever and a doer and accomplisher pattern. You know, the further along I got in my first year, like that being last year and trickling into this year, I found that it was it's so focused on this pattern. I mean, is so focused on. So there's two things. My self-worth, you know, we talk about collapse distinctions in strong coach, my
Mm-hmm.
self-worth being tied in with the work that I'm doing. So I'm not worth anything if I'm not accomplishing or crossing things off to-do list. That's the first thing that came up that I'm, you know, working on resolving. You know, again, work in progress. Then the second thing is um this idea that I'm not giving enough space in my schedule, which I'm believing that's where this uncomfortableness is showing up. Is that, I know that's what you talk about when you started talking about microdosing. I'm like, yeah, very much. This is what I'm looking at. If I can figure out a way to like maximize like 2 calls a day, as opposed to lining up this need or desire, this perceived, you know, in order for me to be like a worthwhile podcast host, to line up, you know, 5 calls every Monday like clockwork, right? So to
Mm-hmm.
step back from that and just go, okay, how many can I do to get enough episodes for the next month? You know, can I do that on one day instead of 4 straight Mondays? Yes. Yeah. So just figuring those types of things out, adjusting the system. So I have a system. I'm lucky enough to have that. I'm finding my system that I've created to be yeah, showing up in my body as like there is some friction and there's some like resistance to it. So yeah, that's just me redeveloping myself and listening to my body. Okay, why am I dreading something? You know, dread, again being a strong word.
Right.
Uh um Something that when I'm in the moment, I'm really enjoying. So figuring that part out. So yeah, I really like how you got into like the psychology of like patterns and such, because that's a great topic.
Yeah, and it's like when I think about things, and I imagine a lot of us coaches can, you know, there's a meme of Alan from The Hangover, and he's got like all the math equations. Like that's
Yeah.
my head when it comes to like anything that I do in life, as I'm evaluating like how does this fit in, and it's like this super analytical part of me where like part of that balance is to take away the structure and just go with the flow sometimes too, and what's been helpful in that, and you're acknowledging like the pattern is I think I've referenced to you, I don't know if on the last podcast, I'm going through training camp for the soul. for you guys listening, Training Camp for the Soul is a program that is centered around healing childhood trauma, where it may be showing up as a roadblock in your life, so on and so forth. And what I've learned in this program is that you are not your pattern. You're running a pattern at that time. And when you can notice when you're running pattern, then you're able to see it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's information, it's feedback, in the same sense of like, okay, well, I'm running my pattern. And as a helpful information source, what really helped me identify my pattern, which based on what you're sharing, I imagine there's some overlap there, is I run a rigid pattern. A rigid pattern is the perfectionist, that they're defined by their work, basically workaholic, perfectionist, people that run in this idea of needing to control things. And the rigid pattern is one of either 5 or 6 patterns. Forget if they're called personality patterns or just patterns, by Stephen Kessler. And to my knowledge, he's written a book about it. I haven't read the book. I've just learned about it through the program. And I share that because we can often identify ourselves as, I am rigid, right? And I'm not. I just run a rigid pattern at times.
Yeah, right.
And there's a clear distinction there.
Yeah.
Is you are your purpose. What is your purpose? And when you get more connected to that, as I shared earlier in the podcast, of I'm here to be present and aware in my life experiences, to connect with myself at the deepest level, to go where is accessible and also where is not accessible. Like that's my purpose. But the rigid pattern is just a pattern that I run through conditioning of some sort that I've had.
Yeah, great distinction, and very well put. Training Camp for the Soul. Yeah, I've been intrigued by that one. I'll have to talk to you a little bit more about that off air. I'm definitely interested in that. So yeah, Colin, I want to like I mentioned, be respectful of your time, and I want to get into your alcohol-free journey. So let's put a wrap on this one here. Where can folks find you? We mentioned it, we'll have it in the show notes, but what's the easiest way to get a hold of you? Like if somebody's like, wow, I'm really digging what this guy's saying, how can people get a hold of you online?
Right now, the best way is on Instagram. So I did the handle earlier. I'll do it again. It's at COLLIN with 2 L's _ MEEVES, MEEV as in Victor, ES. That's the best way to find me. Message me if you guys are wanting to strike up a conversation and connect with me. I also do have an email list that if you message me on Instagram, we can get you on the email list as well. Just another way that I'm putting out content. Besides that, I am beginning to reconnect with Facebook, so stay tuned on that. But Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me right now.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Colin. We'll be coming back, listeners. We'll just keep listening. We're going to come back with part 2 right away.